Well, this video is going to be an experiment video. I want to see if there's different ways or different things that you can use in ResinCrete or eco resins to colour it. I've been asked this by quite a lot of people, so I've pulled together some things that I think might work. We'll be able to compare them against the J-Diction ResinCrete pigments, which are specifically designed for ResinCrete or any eco resin. So what I'm going to be testing today is powdered food colouring, mica powder, alcohol inks, liquid food colour, and a cheap acrylic paint. And we're going to see if we can colour the ResinCrete or how it works. It'll be interesting to find out. And I've got this little mini donut mould. It's glossy on the inside, so this will work really well for resin. Thank you, Claire Holloway, for recommending this little mould to me. Claire's one of my members, and she's always full of great ideas and support for all the members. So thank you, Claire. I'm working on this piece of paper here so that I can mark up which one I've used so I don't forget. And also I know which is the top because this mould's got two little circles on it there. Oh, it's got two little circles there as well. I hadn't noticed them. What a nimble. Right, I'm going to know which is the top because I'm going to cut the corner off this mould. There we go. I now know which is the top because I've cut the corner off that mould. So as long as I've got that facing upwards, I've got it round the right way because there's circles on all corners. Everything I'm going to be using is going to be a yellow pigment because it's quite a hard pigment, I always find. So I think that a hard pigment to give a solid colour. So I think this is going to be a good test. The powdered food colouring looks very orange to me, but if I remember rightly, it does turn yellow once it gets wet. But we will have to see. But it's the closest I've got, and it says yellow, and it's the closest I've got to being yellow. So I'm going to mix up some ResinCrete, and I'm going to mix up for each one separately. So I'm using the same amount and the same amount of water each time. So let's get on with it. And the ResinCrete I'm using is the 30 minutes full curing. So it should be cured in 30 minutes. But these are quite small. I will probably leave them an hour before I demold them. ResinCrete is brilliant. It's a water-based, 100% natural product. And it's a very pure product. And that is why it is the whitest of all the eco resin. And it cures, I think, really, really hard. Much harder than the other ones. And I'm going to mix it up in the ratio of 100 of the powder to 30 of water. And I'm going to be using a fork to mix it because I find that that works so much better. Well, I've got my ResinCrete mixed up now. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put the powder, the food colouring powder, directly into that because I think that just might go clumpy. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of water to that and then mix that around first because that way hopefully it isn't going to go quite as clumpy. Yeah, and that's all dissolved in there now. So what I'm going to do is pour that into there and then give that a bit of a mix round in there to see if that will make that marbly. It is coming out a lot more yellow in there than it was, definitely. And now I'm going to fill that mould right up. See if we get a marble effect. Well, that's definitely given it a colour. There's no doubt about it. And now what I'm going to do is completely mix that in. Let's see if we can get a solid colour with it. There we go. So that's completely mixed in now. Yeah, you can see the difference. And I've filled that one up. So now I'm going to mix up my ResinCrete. Keep going. I'll show you how they mix. And then we can see how they've come out at the end. So that one's curing now. And what I'm going to be using is the liquid food colouring. And we can see how well that mixes in. There we are. Pour that one in. That seems to be mixing okay. And the great thing about the purity of the ResinCrete is because it's nice and pure, you're not going to get trapped bubbles and imperfections in it as you will with other thicker types of eco resin. And this is the one where it's completely mixed in. That's a very pale colour, but it might cure darker. We don't know. Not yet. So this is the mica powder, and I'm using a yellow mica powder. Now, I don't think mica powder is going to do a great deal, but we will see. I'm going to put quite a bit in, because if not, I don't think it's going to mix up. It's leaving a bit of a colour in there. Not much, though. So that's the marble looking one, and this is going to be the more solid colour one. To me, that just looks like an off-white, and I put quite a lot in there as well. So the next one is alcohol ink, and I'm going to be using the yellow again. I don't hold out any hope for this. In fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if this stops the actual ResinCrete curing. Quite a bit in again. Give that a bit of a mix round. I'll pour that in. Now I'll give it a full stir. Make sure it's fully mixed in. That don't look really any different to me now than the normal ResinCrete. And this one is going to be just standard, really bog standard, cheap acrylic paint. I'm not going to put too much in of that because I don't want it to cause a problem. But I've put enough in, I think, to give it a bit of colour. Certainly more than I would of the ResinCrete pigment. Oh, and that is already starting to react with that and cure that up. Really, look at that. That's nearly cured up already. Not even sure I'm going to be able to get in there and give it a full mix through. I might be able to. Let's lay this a bit flatter. So that definitely had a reaction with that, the acrylic paint. And that hasn't really coloured it a great deal. And this last one I'm going to be using is, of course, the ResinCrete's own make of pigment colours. I'll mix that in a little bit, get a marble effect. And now I'll go ahead and finish mixing it in. The great thing is this isn't reacting in any way with this ResinCrete, so it's not causing it to cure. And I know it will cure, no problems at all. Pour the solid one in. And this last one I'm doing is going to be pure white. Nothing added to it at all, because then we can see if we can colour the ResinCrete afterwards by painting these particular colours on them. So there we go. Now I'm going to leave this for an hour to cure up. These have all cured now, so what we can do is take these out of the moulds and have a really good look and see which methods have worked and which ones are the best. The powdered food colouring has definitely done a colour on it, and it's quite a nice colour. It's not vibrant, but it's a nice colour. It didn't really do much with the swirl. The food colour liquid has given a very, very pale yellow, although it did give a darker yellow on the base. For the swirl, nothing really. Mica powder, the slightest hint of a tone change there, and there is no difference between those two. Alcohol inks, well, you might as well not have bothered. Didn't do anything. And I put quite a bit in, so I wouldn't go for them. Acrylic paint, the cheap acrylic paint, has given a very, and you saw how much I put in, has given a very pastel-y kind of yellow, but there's definitely a bit of a colour there. But the ResinCrete pigment, that has given the best results without a shadow of a doubt. That is a really vibrant yellow, and you have got a swirl pattern there as well. Personally, I think the ones that I would go for is, firstly, if I wanted a rich colour, a solid colour and a swirl, I'd definitely go for the ResinCrete pigments, and they do last nice a long time. Secondly, I would go for the food colour powder, which has worked really quite well, better than I thought it would. And possibly, if I wanted a very pastel-y colour, then I would go for the food colour liquid. The others I just wouldn't bother with. Now what I'm going to do is see how well these paint. I'm not going to seal any of them first, because I think that would be pointless. But I am going to see how well they paint with the powder, with all the things. So the powder, again, I'm going to mix the powder up with a little tiny bit of water, because I think that's the way to paint it on. And I'm also going to do the same with the other powders as well, because I wouldn't paint that powder directly on there anyway. I've only used a very tiny amount of water in there to make a paste. So let's see how well they colour with that. Now this is ResinCrete is, until it's sealed, is absorbent, like all of these. We'll let these dry, and then we'll see how well they stay once we put the sealer on, if that affects it in any way. Because there's no point painting something and then when you put the sealer on, it comes right off again, is there? It is still a bit powdery and a bit lumpy, and it's certainly quite orange rather than yellow doing it this method. But it might dry more yellow. Probably because it's highly concentrated. And I've left the white in the middle so we can do a comparison as well to what it would look like to the actual white. So now that's on there, what I'm going to do is just go over that with a wet brush and see if I can smooth out all that colour and get more of a yellow colour or stain into it. Get rid of some of these little gritty bits, because it should have stained that quite well. And that might also help to make it go a little bit more yellow. It's stained that quite nicely. So this is the lemon yellow food colouring, the liquid one. That's a lovely colour going on there, and it's a lot smoother than using the powder, and it's absorbing in there beautifully at the moment. Let's see how well it goes afterwards once it's dry. That's that one. And this is the mica powder, which I've also mixed up in a little bit of water. It'll be really interesting to see how this comes, because the mica powder certainly didn't leave any shimmer or shine on this. And by mixing it up with water, because this is a porous substance before it's sealed, I think it's going to colour it quite well. And I've certainly coloured it much quicker and much better than the actual mica powder itself. And it has left a really nice shimmer on it so far. Let's just take it down a little bit with a clean brush. Get rid of some of those bits of powder that's stuck. The next one is the alcohol ink. I want to make sure my brush is nice and dry for this one. And that has actually definitely given a colour. Much more than it did by putting it in. I mean, we know the acrylic paint is going to work on this, but I'll do it anyway. Yeah, the acrylic paint has given a lovely colouring. And the last one is the ResinCrete pigment. Now, I have no idea if this... I've never used it as a paint before. I don't think I'm going to need much. I'm also not sure that this is going to work. I'll be surprised, but there we go. I mean, it gives a beautifully deep, rich colour. So that's the ResinCrete colour, and it's actually dried on there better than I thought it would. So far, I think all of those are successful, but it's the next test. The one I'm really, really surprised about is the mica powder that has given a beautiful sheen on that. So we'll leave them for a couple of hours now to dry out fully before we seal them. So these are all dry now. They've been drying a good couple of hours. What I'm going to be using is this gloss sealer, which is designed for ResinCrete. It can also be used on paper mache. It can be used on other eco resins, and it does seal watertight as well, which is really useful if you're turning your ResinCrete into vases. I'm going to apply it using a sponge because I think that's the best way. It comes with sponges, and this way you don't get any streaks on it. So let's have a look. Oh, look, that's the food colouring is coming off straight away onto that sponge, but I'm not surprised about that. But we'll see if it covers anyway, and if it seals and gives it a nice finish. It has come off onto the sponge, but that happens anyway. So let's have a look at the one with the food colouring, where I painted it on afterwards. Again, it's going... Oh, it's actually taking off the outer layer of that food colouring. So it hasn't absorbed into there as well as I thought. We don't need to do the solid ones of them because that will react in the same way as the front one. So the liquid food colouring, let's use the other end of the sponge. And that's not coming off. It's coming off a little bit. It's giving a little bit of colour bleed, but not a great deal. Try it where we painted it on, the food colouring. Yeah, again, that is taking that off and giving it a completely different colour. Well, not completely different colour, but completely different depth of colour. Now, the mica powder ones, I'm not going to bother with those two because I just don't see there's any point because they've not done anything. But I am going to put it onto this one where I sealed it. Now, a little bit of that is coming off. It's actually smoothing that out really well, and it's still leaving that shimmer in there. I really am pretty pleased with the mica powder, painting that on. The alcohol ink, again, very subtle change. Going to put a bit on there. It's not taken much off it at all. I mean, it is a subtle colour and it has taken a little bit off, but not much. The acrylic paint, no, that's not taken any off that at all on there, which is the one that was embedded into the ResinCrete. Let's see if it takes any off. No, that's not taken any off the acrylic paint that I painted on as well. So that's great. And now we'll go to the ResinCrete pigment. Well, that has taken a little bit off, not a great deal. And now let's go to where we painted it on. It's dried much better than I thought it would dry, and it has taken a little bit off as well. So I'll leave these dry, and then I can give you my final conclusion. The sealer is all dry on these now, and I've come to my conclusions. The food colouring works on all three of them, and it gives an okay finish, I think. Liquid food colour also works on all three of them and gives a bit more of a richer colour than the powdered. Mica powder absolutely doesn't work. 2 crosses. But painting it on using a little bit of water, it is a little bit streaky, but I think you could even that out with a brush, and it seals really well and still leaves that nice mica iridescence on there. I like that. Alcohol inks really, the first two complete flop, but the last one, it's okay. Very pale yellow. Acrylic paint, again, first two, load of rubbish. But the last one, it painted lovely and it seals really well. And the ResinCrete pigment, it gives you the swirls that I was looking for there. Gives a very solid colour there. Different to the food colouring colour and that one. And it paints on okay and seals okay, painted on, which is actually a surprise to me. So you've got some choices there and some things to avoid. Hope you've enjoyed this experiment. I've enjoyed doing it. I've learned a lot from this. And that will help me going forward in the future when I want to paint or colour my ResinCrete or eco resin. Check out the video I've got coming up next if you want to learn more about using ResinCrete and what to do with it. Boom that like button, hit that subscribe button, but most of all, enjoy your resin. Take care. Bye.